Well, good evening. We want to welcome you to In the Blender with Brandon and Madeline Hyman. And I tell you guys, we are so excited to be with you on this evening. If you tuned in with us last week, we had an exciting episode. Oh man, from the single perspective. And I tell you, it was just off the chain. We had Niecy Thomas and Keisha Davis. They were on with us last week, and I tell you, we just had such an awesome time just sharing some things from their perspective, how they saw the blended family, um, and also what they were getting from the blended, from in the blender. And so we were just elated to have them on last week. But tonight we're going to finish what we started the week before that. We talked about where did step come from. And you guys know my position on the word step, but we hear it all the time. And I never really heard anyone break down where the word came from. And so we talked about where the word step came from. And then we also talked about how do the children view the former step parent after divorce. And so anybody know me, that's big for me because you'll rarely hear me say the word step. I mean, rarely. So in talking about this is just something that's of a necessity. We have to discuss it. We have to get deep into this because after all, we're the blenders. Our program is in the blender. And so we deal with all things blended family. And so we're going to jump right into this. But no, before we do that, guys, we got to put this out there. Listen, you want this in your repertoire, in your arsenal. This is the ABCs of the blended family. And as you can see, it was written by Brandon and Madeline Hyman. Let me get it correct. You can see it was written by Brandon and Madeline Hyman. I tell you, we are excited for this. It just take you from A to Z, some building blocks, some nuggets that will assist you in developing your blended family, to take your blended family to that next level, that next dimension. And so you want this. It's a very short read. We didn't want this to be something big and arduous and tedious. We wanted this to be something that you can just pick up. And again, you can go from A to Z. You can pick out an alphabet and you can apply whichever alphabet you chose to your daily living. Just choose one, sweetheart. Just one alphabet.
No, we did two from the book. Or they got to get the book. No, got to get the book.
So like Madeline said, you guys have to get the book. No, really, you have to get this book. I mean, this is something that we've been working on for the last, year and a half, almost 2 years.
I mean, I don't know if this particular one on the books, the series.
Yes.
Of doing them, but.
Yeah. And so you want this, guys. There was careful thought into this book. It wasn't something that was just put together, but something that we know that will assist you in building the blended family. And so we're going to start with some statistics, as we mostly do. And last week, we're going to do a recap of some of the things that we shared the week before last. But we're also going to add in some things that we didn't get a chance to discuss, and we're going to close this out. But I want to bring in these two statistics because I thought that they were great that we didn't discuss the last time we talked about this topic. In 1970, 84% of children lived with their married biological parents, whereas by 2009, only 60% did so. So listen to that. In 1970, 84% of children lived with their married biological parents, whereas by 2009, only 60% did so. And we know now this is 2019. So you can imagine that number now. And those statistics are constantly coming in. That's why I didn't give you the current status. But again, this is something that is just evolving, is building. And so that's the reason why we're talking about this specific topic and this subject, because we want to put a dent in those numbers. We want to put a dent in this thing, because if we don't attack this now, if we don't declare war on divorce, if we don't work on building strong families, whether they're nucleus or blended, if we don't work on building these strong family units, this number is going to go through the roof. I mean, it's already despairing. It's already disappointing. It's already frustrating to hear these type of numbers as relates to the family unit. And so we want to make sure, hey, Nick, what's going on, Anthony? So we want to make sure that we're attacking these things. And so, again, in 1970, it says 84% of children live with their married biological parents, whereas by 2009, only 60% did so. And then it says in 2009, only 20, now listen to this, guys, because this is relative to individuals like myself. In 2009, only 29% of African American children live with their married biological parents. This was in 2009. In 2009, guys, only 29% of African American children live with their married biological parents, while 50% were living in single mother homes. So if it was 29% in 2009, I'm thinking it's probably around 19 to 19% right now. And if it was 50% with single moms, I'm thinking it's probably about 60 to 75% right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, guys, we got to work on this. We got to work on keeping these units together. We got to work on, because this is something that, and this is so passionate to me, because it's affecting the next generation. It's affecting my children and my children's children and the generation after that. And it's so frustrating, because as a parent, you can see some things where you can see some areas that you fell short in. You can see your children falling short in those same areas. And so we have to make sure, guys, that we fix this. We got to make sure that we work on this, that we turn this thing around, because the last thing I want is my grandchildren living out the same things I lived out when they don't have to. Mm-hmm. My grandchildren don't have to go through divorce. My grandchildren don't have to go through broken homes. They don't have to go through this blended dynamic if we do our jobs right. Mm-hmm. We have an awesome opportunity, guys. Listen to this. If you're a blended family, you have an awesome opportunity to change the course of generations to come. You have an awesome opportunity, man, to put some things in place, to put some things in order that your grandkids, that your great-grandchildren will never have to live out. Apostle Mike said something like this. He said, there are generational curses, but then there are generational choices. And let me say that again. There are generational curses, but then there are generational choices. And so we're giving you guys this information because the curse has already been destroyed. But if you don't stay on track, if you don't maintain this posture and this position, if you don't do everything that there's needed in order to keep this off of your family, then guess what? That same decision or that same choice is now going to present itself to your children's children. Mm-hmm. And then they'll consequently begin to live out what you thought you already overcame or what you did overcome, but because you didn't hold fast to your profession of faith, because you didn't hold fast to what you believed and what you said was going to be so, now they're dealing with these things. Now they're falling short in these areas. And so it's important, guys, that we do what we said we're going to do, and we build these families the way God intended for us to do it. And so we talked about the origin of the word step, and and that came from an 8th century Latin Old English word meaning orphan. And so that was something new to us, because again, we always heard that word, but we never really knew where that came from. And so we also learned that the words are used to denote a connection resulting from the remarriage of a widowed parent and are related to the words meaning bereaved. And so that's important, guys. Again, we're not going to go into all of that. We're going to encourage you to go to our Facebook page or to the In the Blender Facebook page or on YouTube, and you can view the previous recorded episodes to get this information a little bit more in detail. And then we talked about, of course, the term step parent is only by association. And this is something that evolved in modern terms due to the increase of divorce. And so when you talk about step parent, I didn't even know that. And most people don't know that that word is a word that came because of an increase in divorce. And with that increase in divorce also came an increase in remarriage. And so that's where that word step parent came from. And so then we talked about the effects after divorce. And this is so important because, we declare war on divorce. Let's make that clear. We declare war on divorce. We're not proponents of divorce. We don't subscribe to divorce. We believe that you got yourself in this mess, you can get yourself out of it. Now, of course, there are some things, and we talked about that with a little bit with our friend Nisi. There are some deal breakers, and there are some things that break the deal. And so we talked a little bit about that, and you guys definitely want to go and view that episode because that was just mind-blowing. Because there are some things, guys, coming into this blended family dynamic that are deal breakers. So you think. There were some things that I thought were deal breakers. There were some things that my wife thought was a deal breaker. One in particular, tall, dark, and handsome. Yeah. Then she meet short, fat, bald. So I was the total opposite at that particular time. I was the total opposite of the type of man that my wife was interested in. And so, I don't know if it was I had a good game or I don't know what it was. I just believe it was the purpose and the plan that God had on our lives. I'm going to put it that way. I'm going to give her a pass that way. But that was a deal breaker for her, She wasn't going to date anyone opposite of that. She wasn't going to see anyone opposite of that. And then here I come. And I changed everything. I changed her whole perspective and view as relates to relationship. And so, did I?
We here, right?
Kind of quiet over there. She's looking up in the air like, I don't know. She's looking in the air like, I don't know if you changed that or not. Maybe so, maybe not. See that? That's the look. That's what I'm talking about. No, but again, there were deal breakers. I thought for me, coming into a marriage relationship, the deal breaker for me, that's what I thought would be children. But then I found out that wasn't a deal breaker. But that was just my perspective at that particular time. And when I really looked at it and assessed that thing, I was like, man, I was exposed to that my entire life. Because blended family was nothing new to me. Although my mother and my father, and I'm a product of a nuclear family, I had aunts and uncles who were blended families. And so I've always seen that dynamic, and I've seen it successfully. And so when I begin to look at them, and I begin to look at what I learned from them, that quickly, and then when I met my wife, and I looked at what I was used to in my family, that changed my decision. That changed my posture as related to marrying someone with children. Because I thank God for my Uncle James, and I thank God for my Uncle Richard, who took another man's children and raised them as their own. And so when I looked at that dynamic and I saw the success that they had as relates to the blended family, man, I was like, well, that's an easy one. I could do that myself. although I didn't have much information on how to do it, other than what I thought I saw.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But what I thought I saw was enough for me to say, you know what? I need to change that view. That's a very distorted view that you have. And so I changed that view. And here we are 21 years later, living out a successful blended marriage, a blended family. And so that's key. But we're talking about this after the divorce because understand, guys, there's so many people, sweetheart, that are dealing with situations in their family dynamic right now. It's specifically the blended family dynamic, and they're giving up. They're throwing in the towel. They're walking away. I mean, listen, this is the other opportunity that you prayed for. This is the other opportunity that you said, if I get one more chance, I'm gonna do it right. If I get another opportunity, I won't be in this position again. And I'm seeing so many people now, they're back in that same position that they said they would no longer be in. But what most people don't address and what most people don't look at is the effect that it has on the children. And that's why we're discussing this, because there's an impact that this divorce has on children, that if we don't correct this, guys, we're setting up the next generation for failure in the generations to come. We're setting them up for failure. And so we have to talk about some things, because watch this. We talked about on the week before last how researchers in the University of Missouri College of Human and Environmental Sciences found stepchildren views of former step parents depended on emotional reactions to the divorce, patterns of support, or resource exchanges, and parental encouragement or discouragement to continue step relationships. And so understand this, guys, that their view, this is what's going to affect that child. It's not just you getting out of that relationship. It's not just you walking away, but there are some things that's going to affect that child, because remember, they had a relationship as well. They build a relationship as well. And because they built a relationship, guess what? Now they're going to be affected. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate that in our selfishness, we don't think about the children. We don't think about how they're going to cope, how they're going to handle things. For the most part, they've already struggled. Right. They've already gone through, because the nucleus family, or the traditional family that they have been used to, mm-hmm. is no longer there. Right. But now someone else comes into their life who now plays the role of mother, or who now plays the role of father. And now that didn't work. And you know, most times when the traditional family breaks up and things don't work out, children automatically blame themselves. Yeah. I have no idea why that's so or why that's true, but studies have shown that children blame themselves for the breakup and the dissolving of the family structure. And so if you're introducing this child now to another breakup, if you're introducing them to another divorce and separation, then now you're compounding the emotions, you're compounding the baggage, you're compounding all the negative things. Hey, Anthony, what's going on? You're compounding all these things that they're struggling with, and now you're wondering why they can't think properly. You're wondering why they aren't sociable like they used to be or like they could be. You're wondering why they're so withdrawn. You wonder why they're so angry and frustrated, because they're blaming themselves again, afresh and anew, for now this relationship not working out. And so that's why we're discussing these things. Whether stepchildren maintain relationships with former step-parents largely depended on whether stepchildren view their former step-parents as family. And so guess what? Whether you think so or not, most times they do. Even if they don't say so initially. Even if they don't say so initially. Because now remember that that association sometimes is age specific. That association is sometimes age specific because when you're talking about younger children, between I would say toddler and preteen, most times, or between toddler and 10, most times they just want acceptance. They just want to be a part.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about preteen and teens, most times they're looking at, I got my own parent.
Right.
I got my own mother. I have my own father. You're not my mother. You're not my father. And most of you, many of you have heard that before. You've heard that position. And so their look at that relationship sometimes is a little different. And then you got the adult children who now that could be a whole nother, that's a whole nother discussion. We'll have to have that at another time because that one there is large within itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but again, that's largely dependent on whether they view that parent or that step parent as family. And so you got to understand that there are some things that they go through because they're there. That person, especially if like for us, 21 plus years. So I had one that was a preteen. I had and two that were teenagers.
Right. 10, 13, 16.
Exactly. So I had one that was a preteen, one that just became a teen, and then one that was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And then not only did I have one that was a teenager, but the one that was a teenager was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was another dynamic within itself. And so, wow. And so I had some struggles early on
Mm-hmm.
because here I come with a preteen and two teens, and I'm stepping in the role of a dad. I'm stepping in the role of somebody who they love with all their heart, who they love with all their might and their soul. And now I'm taking in their mind his position.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm stepping in his role. And now I gotta somehow show them that I'm not trying to replace him.
Right.
I'm not trying to move him out the way. I'm just establishing my position.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just establishing my role in your life. And so that's some work. And as I begin to work that, our relationship grew.
Right.
And I went just from being my mother's husband to being my dad, my father.
Mm-hmm.
And it took some time. That wasn't something that happened instantly. That took some work because you guys heard the stories, some of the stories that are the things that we went through. You heard of some of the stories, some of the trials and some of the bad decisions that I made, some of my dumb days as related to the blended family and how I had to correct some things because it affected my family so negatively. And so, wow. Hmm.
So did you read? Let me read this one.
Yeah, please.
The researchers interviewed 41 young adults who had experienced step-family dissolutions. Half of the participants had considered or claimed their step-parents as family at one time or another.
Mm-hmm.
Of those, half of the adults still maintained relationships with their former step-parents, but the other half had since ended their relationships with their former step-parents.
And so we talked about that the week before last, because I thought that when I really looked at that number, it was mind blowing. Because we talked about 41 young adults. This study was on 41 young adults. Now listen to this, guys. 41 young adults who had experienced step family dissolutions. Half of the participants considered or claimed their step parents as family at one time or another. Mm-hmm. So 41 and half of that is what number, girl?
20 and a half.
20.5.
20.5.
So 20.5 of those young adults considered that parent as family at one time or another. And then it says, of those, half of the adults still maintain relationships with their former parents or step parents. Now, half of that 20.5 is what?
10.5.
10.25.
What? Whatever, 10 people.
10 people.
Mhm.
See, number girl's gonna get it straight. This are thing numbers. And so out of that 41, 10 of them maintain relationships with their former step parents, but the other half has since ended their relationship with their former step parent. Now watch this. So out of that 41, only 25% of them still had that relationship. That's 10, 40, then 10.
Mm-hmm.
So out of 41 of those surveyed, only 10 kept that relationship. Now, can you imagine the damage or the harm that that decision could have had on the other 30 children or the other 30 young adults? Now we're talking about out of those 30, maybe half of them said, I'm never getting married. I'm never getting a relationship. Out of half of that, the other half may say, I'm never even having children. All because of a decision. All because of a choice. And most times this decision, sweetheart, I find out, most times this choice is based off of something so trivial, something so small, something so minute in the big scheme of things. Let me say it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not minimizing anything that anybody goes through. Not at all. But what I'm saying is what you're going through isn't bigger than the big picture. And if you put the big picture in front of that, that will change now the view of what you're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Because most people don't see destiny. Most people don't see others. We understood early on that, first of all, divorce wasn't an option. Secondly, people were dependent on us to make it.
Mm-hmm.
There are people right now that's watching us via Facebook, that listen to us on the radio, that are purchasing the book. There are people all over that are depending on us to have a successful marriage and blended family. They're dependent on it. Not only are they dependent on it, but we're dependent on it. It's not just others benefiting from this thing, but we're benefiting from it. Because it's maturing us, it's showing us some things about ourselves that we may not have necessarily seen or known before. It's pulling out of us some gifts and some talents that may have been dormant, just waiting for us to now tap on the shoulders of them, so that now we can experience life at a whole nother level, a whole nother dimension. And so this thing is bigger than you. And if you can look at it from that standpoint, then what you're going through may not be as bad as you think. Now you say, how can you say that? You're talking about somebody who attempted to discipline a child. In my attempt to discipline, which was not the right decision, put me in a position to be at that particular time investigated by child protection, which could have ruined my life, because at that particular time I was an educator. I was in the system. I was an operational manager of a Christian academy. And so that could have ruined my career. Because if you're in that registry, you're going to be in that registry for at least 15 years. So now somebody with an outstanding record now has this blemish on them, or would have had this blemish on them because of a bad decision and a bad choice. Not only that, then I also ran the risk of losing this one, because I was disciplining one of her children, which now could have been a huge problem in our relationship, which could have been a deal breaker. Or no, it could have been something that broke the deal. It really could have been something. What's that look?
Oh, because it was almost something that broke the deal, but only because I had already said that, well, we had already said divorce wasn't an option. It was something that we had to work through.
Period.
Yeah.
Period. But again, that was the risk that I ran.
Absolutely.
That was the risk that I ran. And trust me, when I ran that risk, I didn't run that risk no more. That was the last time I ran that risk. You know what I mean? But again, it was the decision. a unwise decision that I made that almost cost me not only my freedom, not only my life, but my family as well. Mm-hmm. And so again, guys, we just want to encourage you, and we're talking about this because it affected my children. It affected my relationship with each one of the girls. That episode there changed changed the picture, not the picture, but it changed our family. Mm-hmm. It put our family in another position that we didn't want our family to be in. The landscape, that's what I want. That's what I'm looking for. It our family. Mm-hmm. There were so many negative things that came out of that bad decision that affected how my family went from that point on. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it took work, guys. It took some serious work on my behalf to get things back, not only just back to the place that it should be, but then beyond. Because it wasn't just good to get it back. Right. It wasn't just good to get things back, back to normal. I had to now take things from back to normal to a whole nother stratosphere. Because normal wasn't good enough at that particular time. Because normal was almost 10 years later. Right. And so I had to put in some work to get things where they are now. And so what's the next one, sweetheart? No, we're going to go to the next one.
Divorcing couples should consider how their breakup will affect their biological children and stepchildren.
Now, we talked about that. You have to consider before you make that decision. And again, we declare war on divorce. So understand this, before you make that decision, how is this going to affect the children? Right. Both biological as well as blended. Mm-hmm. How is it going to affect them? Go ahead, sweetie.
Although a 10-year relationship might be a small portion of parents' lives.
Now stop. Although a 10-year relationship might be a small portion of your lives, because for most of you guys, that amount of time you've been married, it seems small. It can seem real small because time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah. And then it could seem real long too.
Exactly.
Depends on what point a person is, or the relationship is in at that time.
And then sometimes people just want to make it small. Yeah. Because if you make it small, then the personal impact of it has been diminished because in your mind you're making it small. Go ahead, sweetie.
10 years gonna come and go so quick. So anyway, although a 10-year relationship might be a small portion of parents' lives, it could be a significant portion of of children's lives.
Now watch this. Just because it may seem a small portion of your life, I can move on. I can start all over again. I could do this. That's not necessarily saying the children are going to be in that position where they feel the same way. Right. Or even that they can even bounce back like that. Mm-hmm. Because the effects of that separation, the effects of that decision now affects them in a whole nother way. Mm-hmm. What's the next one?
Step-parent, stepchild relationship in particular have neither legal nor genetic ties, which are two markers that legally and culturally we use to decide who is obligated to whom.
Now watch this. These are the two markers we use. These are the two. If we're using any markers, these are the two. Legal or neither legal nor genetic ties in that relationship. Those are two markers.
Mm-hmm. Legally and culturally.
No.
You went back. Okay. Yeah. Right. I apologize.
Yeah. And so those are the two markers that we use. If there's no legal or no genetic ties, those are the markers that we use culturally. Those are the markers that we use legally.
Got you.
You get what I'm saying?
No, I read it back. I read it wrong.
21 years, I know what you're thinking. And so again, those are the markers though. And so because we say, you know what? They don't have no legal ties. So you say they don't have no genetic ties. So you say, then those are the markers that we use when we say we want to get out of this, and we don't consider the children. We don't consider what they're going through. We don't consider the effects that this decision now has on their lives. Hey, Stephanie, how you doing there? We don't consider those things. Now watch this. I considered that early on because early on, not only were they my wife's daughters, they were my daughters. So I never addressed them as stepdaughters. I've never in the history of our relationship have I ever addressed my wife's daughters as my stepdaughters. I've always addressed them as my daughters because I had a legal tie. Watch this, guys. I'm gonna help you out with this. Although I didn't go down to the courts and sign documents saying that I wanted to change their name to my name, when I decided to marry their mother, when she walked down that aisle, when we exchanged those vows, and we both ended with I do or I will or whichever one of those sayings we said, when we put those rings, those circular bands on our fingers, when the man of God say, you may now kiss your bride. When we did that, I legally made a connection with those girls. Not only did I legally make that connection, I genetically made that connection because now the two became one flesh. The two became one flesh. So not only were not only did they now become legally mine, they were genetically mine. So much so that I know my daughter's positions. I know their thought patterns. I know what they're thinking. I know what they're feeling. I'm so tapped and tied into them because I didn't just take that ceremonial procedure as something random. I didn't just take that as something that I was just doing. I put that on as a garment. I stepped into that, and now I possess not only just that, but I possess them as well. So they were just as much a part of my life as their mother. So you got to understand something. Although the world system said these are markers, I didn't use that marker. I used that marker and said, I'm erasing that. And I'm making this thing the right way, the way it was intended on being. Go ahead, sweetie.
When there's a second divorce, there are neither blood nor legal ties binding step-parents and stepchildren. So that creates an added level of complexity about who's in families and why.
So this is what they say, guys. When there's a second divorce, because again, we're talking about this. This is the blended family. And if you decide to walk away from this, this is what you need to understand. When there's a second divorce, there are neither blood nor legal ties binding step-parents and stepchildren. So that creates, watch this, an added level of complexity about who's in families and why. Why do you want to complex their life? Why do you want to make their life complex when it's our responsibility as parents to make their lives easy? Definitely much better than ourselves, our own. And so that decision now complicates things for them. And again, we talked about some of those complexities, but you need to understand it, and that's why we're talking about that. Go ahead, sweetie.
For a substantial portion of these children's lives, they've been living with a step-parent who in many cases became a parent to them.
Stop. For a substantial portion of these children's lives, they've been living with a step-parent, or in our words, a blended parent, who in many cases became a parent to them. I told you guys, my daughters know their father. But guess what? I'm their father. My daughters have a great relationship with their father. But guess what? I'm their father. And so regardless of that, their relationship with him, I have that relationship with them as well. So much so, I believe my relationship with them is greater. Not to diminish their relationship with him, but I put that work in. And not only that, but me and him work together for that.
Mm-hmm.
We work in concert together. So there's no competition. We don't compete for their affection. We don't compete for their love. We don't compete for their admiration. We don't compete for their attention. We both get it because we both play that role.
Absolutely.
We complement each other. Why? Because I understood early on that they need him just as much as they need me.
Right.
And their success, their relationships, their lives were dependent mainly on how I dealt with him. My relationship with him was a key factor in their growing, in their maturing, not only in their lives, but in their children's lives. Mm-hmm. And so that's so important. Go ahead, sweetie.
Then the couples break up. You want me to? Okay, so for a substantial portion of these children's lives, they've been living with a step parent who, in many cases, become a parent to them. Then the couples break up, the families break up, and what happens to these kids?
What happens?
Step parents may have invested a lot of time, a lot of emotion in raising a child, and then end the relationship completely.
Wow.
Sometimes there's an assumption that when the relationship ends, there's no need to continue ties. But for children who gave up viewing someone as a parent, it may not be so easy for them to lose that relationship.
And that's key, guys. That's a lot. That's really a lot. That's really a lot. Because when that couple breaks up, the family breaks up, and what happened to the kids? Because they're not considered. Most times they're not considered because it's just about the two of you. So the children are not considered at all. And then it says step parents may have invested a lot of time. Guess what? I invested a lot of time. You have invested a lot of time. You have invested a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of resources. And so to walk away and emotions. And so now to walk away at this point, after you've invested all of that over what you're walking away from, is devastating. It's absolutely devastating for you to now walk away after years of investing. After years, because guess what? I had to choose the love, especially when I was hurting about or over who I love. So now I had to choose the love. What do you mean? I had to choose to love 3 girls when I was hurting about the boy that I loved that I couldn't see. That was a choice. So now I had to in all that love that I carried around, all that love that was in my back pocket, in my front pocket, in my side pockets, all that love that was on my shoulders, now I had to give it to somebody. Because if I didn't give it away, then that love would have turned to hatred. And that love would have became anger. It was at times. It was at times. But if I didn't give it away, then it would have did more damage than good. It would have did more damage than good. And so step parents, guess what? Guys are investing, man. You invest a lot of time, a lot of emotions in help raising these children, and then to end this completely. And then to have the assumption that when this relationship ends, there's no need to continue ties. Now, we already declaring war on divorce, but you stuck. You're going to make that decision. And that's why we're talking about this, because we're praying that this discussion right now cancels that out. This discussion right now makes you look at the bigger picture. And so, you know what? We can work this out. Because I don't want them to go through, and watch this, and it's not just about them. Let me be clear on that. It's not just about them, but understand something. If something in life isn't bigger than you, then there is no purpose. If you don't have things in your life let me say that again. If you don't have things in your life that are bigger than you, you have no purpose. My girls, my son, my grandchildren, my wife, they're bigger than me. Because there's some things that I want to do. There's some things that this old man wants to do, that this old man wants to be involved in. There's some things that I would want to try. That guess what? Because I have things in my life that are bigger than me, it now determines how I'm going to walk this thing out. It determines now my decision-making process. Because I understand if I do this, it's going to affect her. If I do this, it's going to affect them. If I do this, it's going to affect my grandchildren. And so now when I'm faced with the decision, when I'm faced with a choice that may be contrary, I now got to put these things that are before me that are bigger than me in my face to make me understand that if I make this decision, I'm jeopardizing more than just myself. Go ahead, sweetie.
Okay. Each child and each family are obviously unique with different strengths and weaknesses, different personalities and temperaments, and varying degrees of social, emotional, and economic resources, as well as differing family situations prior to divorce. Despite these differences, divorce has been shown to diminish a child's future competence in all areas of life, including family relationships, education, emotional well-being, and future earning power.
Wow. Did you guys hear that? Let's read that again, sweetie. I don't think they heard that because we're going to break it down, but read it again.
So you tell me when to stop.
Go ahead.
Each child and each family are obviously unique.
So stop right there. So we got it, guys. We know your situation is unique. We know your situation is different. Everybody's situation is unique and different to them. So we've already established that. we're not trying to minimize your thing that you got going on over there. We're just saying that there's some effects. There's some cause and there's some effects that's going to come out of this decision. Go ahead, sweetie.
With different strengths and weaknesses, different personalities and temperaments, and varying degrees of social, emotional, and economic resources.
Stop right there. So guess what? Not only is your situation unique, but you got different strengths and weaknesses. Mm-hmm. There's some things that we were strong in that you may be weak in. There's some things that you are strong in that we may have been weak in. And so we get that. Everybody has different strengths and weaknesses. Not only that, everybody got different personalities. There's some positions that I've taken that you may feel you can't take. Not that you can't take it, but your personality may prohibit you from taking that position. Because for me, I remember one time when the girls wanted to, the girl's father wanted to spend a little more time with them. And so I remember having a discussion with him. I said, listen, as long as your girls are in my house, you can come by at any time. You can come by and see them at any time because they're your daughters. And I don't want you to feel like you're restricted from seeing them. Now, there, of course, are some guidelines and some things that you have to put in place. There has to be some levels of respect and honor and all those things, which we did establish. Mm-hmm. But I offered that to him. Most men aren't going to offer that. And I told him, it was clear. I don't care if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, if it's 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, and you need to see your daughters, my door is open. Thankfully, I never was taken up on that offer. But there were times at 10 o'clock at night, he did stop by. There were times at 9 o'clock at night and 8 o'clock in the evening, he did stop by to see his daughters. And guess what? That was fine with me because they're his daughters. And so I always wanted him not only to feel welcome, but to know that there is no animosity, that there's no division with us, that we're in this thing together. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just for me and him, but it was for their sake. Because I didn't want the girls to be in a position where they had to feel like they were going to choose. Mm-hmm. Although at that particular time, I was lost. At that particular time, I didn't have a chance. I didn't have any skin in the game. But I didn't want to put them in that position. Hey, Chief, what's going on? Hey, Cleophas, how you doing, sir? And so I didn't want to put them in that position. And so you got to understand this, guys, that this is so key. Go ahead, sweetie.
as well as differing family situations prior to divorce.
Mhm.
Despite these differences,
Listen to this, guys.
divorce has been shown to diminish a child's future competence in all areas of life.
Stop. Despite these differences, so in spite of how you may think your situation is different from everybody else, and despite how you may view your relationship as it relates to everybody else's, despite how you may feel like nobody's going through what you're going through, despite all of this, understand these things. Go ahead, sweetie. Divorce has been shown to do what?
Diminish a child's future competence in all areas of life, including family relationships.
Now stop. If it now diminishes their competence in family relationships,
education,
in their education,
emotional well-being,
in their emotional well-being,
and future earning power.
And see, this is stuff, guys, we don't look at. And you're wondering why children are struggling with some of the things they're struggling with is because of the decisions that we as parents have made. And a lot of times we're putting the pressures on them, like, why you aren't getting this? Why you aren't accomplishing what you should be accomplishing? I know you're smarter than this. I know you can do that, but you don't understand the decision that you made. This decision that you made to walk away again, the decision that you made to throw in the towel again, the decision that you made to give up again is now affecting their well-being emotionally, educationally, financially, and in their relationships. Mm-hmm. And you wonder why they can't get the jobs, or they can't start the businesses, or they can't get in the position that they should be in, because they're dealing with those decisions that were made that they weren't even a part of the decision-making process. But because children do what children do, they now okay, because these children, and children blame themselves for that decision. They blame themselves for that choice. And so, go ahead, sweetie. What's this last point? And we're going to get ready to close.
If you think that marriage is hard, while we know that marriage can be made easy, and marriage with our own kids is harder than marriage in a blended clan is often the most challenging with all it brings.
Wow.
Including unresolved drama with exes, financial stress, differing parenting styles, and divided loyalties.
So listen, guys, as we get ready to wrap this up, if you think that marriage is hard, so you're in this blended dynamic, man, and you think, you know what, this is hard. While we know that marriage is made easy. So again, hear what I just said. Marriage is made easy. We didn't say marriage is easy. We said marriage is made easy, which means you're going to have to put in some work. There's going to have to be some effort. There's going to have to be some resolve. There's going to have to be some positioning. There's going to have to be some decision-making processes that are followed that's going to make this thing easy. It's just like, building your body. Most of us don't enter into this life with six-pack abs.
Dealing with decisions that could be a setback. Could you all do blended setbacks?
I like that.
That's good. I got that written down, cuz.
And so understand this, guys, that if you think that it's hard, although we're telling you guys, marriage can be made easy. Because marriage is made easy. It's made easy by what you do to make it easy. Remember, God didn't mess your marriage up and he ain't going to fix it. And I know that sounds strange to a lot of people. What do you mean? He didn't mess it up. So why is he obligated to fix it? You messed it up. You made bad decisions and bad choices. Now you're going to have to start making good decisions and good choices to get that marriage where it's supposed to be at, and then beyond. He didn't do the things that I did in the beginning. I did those things. And so consequently, I had to change my behaviors. I had to change my viewpoint to get out of it what I wanted. And when I begin to do those things, I begin to get out of that relationship exactly what I wanted. And so, in marriage with your own kids, if you think marriage with your own kids is harder, then marriage in a blended clan, wow. In this blended family, guys, marriage is often most challenging with all that it brings. Why? Because you're talking about you can have unresolved issues or drama with exes. Mm-hmm. You can have financial stress, differing parenting styles, and you can also have divided loyalties. Now, watch this. We dealt with all four. We dealt with all four of those. Unresolved drama with the exes. There was a time when I had to correct some things with my ex-wife, with my son's mother, because of some things that she was doing, the position she was taking. I had to clear some things up with that. And then you talk about financial stress. Guess what? Oh boy, now because you're not married, because you're no longer together, then there's a support that needs to take place. And now you're talking about child support, which could be stressful for most people. And so guess what? We had to handle that situation. Then you're talking, we already talked about the differing parenting styles, because my parenting style, I'm from the old school, you know what I'm saying? You whip, then you talk. You don't talk, then whip, you whip, then you talk. So then you all out of order and all wrong anyway, because you never.
Your children, not mine. Whoop your own. Whoop mine.
He was 1,000 miles away. I couldn't whip him. No, but again, different parenting styles. My wife is used to the girls coming in the room and laying across the bed and talk about that day. I was used to the door being closed. We growing up, I didn't go in my parents' room like that. I don't remember sitting across their bed talking about how the day was. We talked in the living room. And so I thought certain areas of the house was designed for certain things, but that was different parenting styles. Mm-hmm. And so we talked about that. And then we talked about, of course, the divided loyalty. Because again, you talked about biological dad and you talk about blended dad. And so we understand
mom, blended mom.
Biological mom and blended mom. And so while you think that all of these things are hard in this blended family, guys, it's at a whole nother level. But, and this is a big but understand this, blended families can be made easy. That's our motto. Blended families can be made easy, which means you're going to have to put some work in it. We want to encourage you guys, listen, if you're going through a struggle in this blended family dynamic, we decree and declare that it's over. That you guys are going to come on top, that you're going to work this situation out, that you're going to allow love to take its proper place and position in your life. Because remember, the Bible says love covers a multitude of sins. So there's some transgressions, there's some things that may have happened, there's some things that may be happening that if you allow love to be paramount and you walk in the spirit of faith, you can overcome those things. Because it's going to, watch this, it's going to take the spirit of faith to love. Because some people and some things just aren't lovable. There's some things that you go through or gone through or going through that just aren't loving. And you're going to have to walk in that spirit of faith, knowing that greater is on the inside of you, knowing that I can do this regardless. We did it. We know it to be so. And you can do it too, because guess what? God is no respecter of persons. The same wisdom, the same understanding, the same knowledge that he gave us to now put us in that position, the same he'll do for you. And so we thank you guys for tuning in to In the Blender with Brandon and Madeline Hyman. Listen, we want to tell you guys, order your books, the ABCs of the Blended Family. How can they get their hands on this, sweetie?
You can email us at weareablendedfamily@gmail.com. Also, check out our website, intheblenderministries.com. And don't forget to tune in on Thursday night, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. on WJMS Live 365 Radio.
Yes,
and
guys.
The books are $15.
Yes, the books are $15. You want to get this. You want to get this in your arsenal. I'm telling you guys.
It's a short little read.
It's a short read, but it's a powerful read. You can go from A to Z. If you apply these, put these building blocks on your foundation, we promise you guys, you're going to stand fast. You're going to stand. You're going to grow. You're going to blossom. You're going to be everything that you went into this thing desiring to be. And that's on top. And so we love you guys. We thank you again for tuning in to In the Blender with Brandon and Madeline Hyman every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Again, don't forget Thursday night. How can they hear us, sweetheart?
On WJMS Live 365 Radio, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m.
We love you guys. Don't forget to share this broadcast. Let's take this across the globe. We love you guys. And until next week, bye-bye.
Bye, guys.